This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Trial Lawyers Association of BC. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. My new book about addictions, All the Way Home, Building Recovery That Works.
Avast ye mateys, welcome aboard the boat. Well now, let me tell you, it's Captain Bluebird speaking, and we don't have to hold you hostage anymore, because now we can get your gold coin by putting these bandits on the ship. And you're just going to be stuffing your coins in there, and pretty soon you'll lose your home, won't you? That seems to be the mixed message from BC Ferries Corp these days. Or is it? We'll find out. They are threatening to put gambling on the semi-high seas out there at Georgia Strait. Good idea? Some of us don't think so. Sandy Garossino, who has a multi-career as an entrepreneur and a prosecutor and a lawyer, and heads up all kinds of charitable organizations, also was pretty much single-handedly the person who stopped the casino from showing up next to BC Place with her Vancouver Not Vegas initiative not too long ago. And we're delighted to welcome her and her deck of cards here to the show. Hello, Sandy.
Thanks, David.
Yeah.
I've got to say there were so many more people than just me involved in that.
I'm sure. Yeah, you got a zillion signatures.
A zillion signatures, but just so broad, such broad support from the health community, from the clerics, the church community,
Yes.
and from law enforcement, and just widespread across the board.
I have to tell you honestly, I work with addictions people every week, and most of the people are on drugs and alcohol. And I confess, to me, one of the most difficult addictions to work with is gambling.
I think that may well be true. It's certainly one of the most silent addictions, and yet it's shockingly widespread.
Yeah.
I was really astounded to learn what I did about it.
So how did you get onto that? How did you get onto this initiative, Vancouver Not Vegas? What prompted you to jump on that?
Well, a number of us got into it. Actually, it came out of the charitable community because, as you recall, originally gambling was legalized in order to provide revenue for sports and the arts and for charitable initiatives. Right. And then the government decided that it was a charitable initiative too, and it started to just, seize more and more and more. And yes. So the charities in 2009 actually had a huge clawback of that money. My own theory is that the government at the time needed money to pay for the roof on the stadium, but they clawed it back. So we got involved as advocates for the charities who had just been, dinged out of this money. Then, once we got into it, we learned a whole lot more. I wish I didn't know what I did.
What's the current status, for example, of the ubiquitous church bingo game?
Well, I think it's not very competitive in the moment. I mean, interestingly
can churches still have bingo games?
Yes, churches can still apply for licenses to do bingo, and there are still bingo halls, and charities still derive a certain piece of that. Yeah. They were originally really sent out to municipalities to beg for increased casino licenses and for slot machines, and they did that kind of under duress, and amazingly enough, they've seen no increase in their own funding as a result of having gone out and opened this floodgate of revenue for the government.
Am I correct in remembering that 3 or 4 years ago, all of the charitable organizations that got a little taste from gambling revenues were cut back?
There was a provincial cutback.
Yes,
on
there
that?
was a huge cutback, and it still has not been restored despite the government language. In 2008, the funding was around $156 million annually, which still was well below the contracted agreement that the government reached with the charities in 1999. But the high water mark was $156 million. They're now at $135 million, so there's still $21 million a year, and that's coming out of charities' pockets year after year.
Okay, so you got onto this whole thing about Vancouver, not Vegas. And what was the original plan? The Edgewater, is that what it's called?
The Edgewater was planning to relocate next to BC Place and to do a massive expansion to roughly 2.5 acres of casino floor space. And the
2.5 acres of casino?
And in fact, that is what City Council, despite everything that you've heard, that's what City Council has approved. They have rezoned that site for 2.5 acres of casino floor space.
They still have.
They still have, and that's the proposal. That's still.
You mean it's not? I thought I'm hopelessly confused now. I thought it was condos, shops, restaurants, and some casino. Mm-hmm.
But that's what has been rezoned is 2.5 acres in floor space. So it's not all on one level. 114,000 square feet, I believe. It's two NFL football fields. That's what's been approved. That's what they're rezoned for.
Look, I have personally very little interest in gambling. It's just not my thing. But maybe 2 years ago, I had dinner with a friend in Queensborough at the Kirin Chinese restaurant. Terrific dinner. And we walked out. It was like the middle of a Sunday. And I said, oh, let's go into this casino. I've never really spent any time. I want to check it out. I want to see what it's like. I went in, and I'm not exaggerating, Sandy. I came out and I said to my friend, this was a vision of hell. Everybody, the customers and the dealers and the managers, looked like they were in purgatory. They were all hangdog looking psychotic, looking miserable, looking depressed.
Where were the young, beautiful women?
Yeah, what happened to Hooters? Where was Hooters?
Where did it didn't look like the ads.
No.
I'm surprised.
Isn't that odd?
No, it's not. I think most members of the public would be shocked and appalled if they went in the average casino to see what the atmosphere is.
It's ugly.
This is not the happiest place on earth.
No. So you defeated that initiative, that motion. But what does that mean? You're telling me that even though you defeated it, the property's still zoned as a possibility?
That's the thing. City Council said no to increased slots and gaming tables.
Yes.
Yes to a vast increase in the floor space. And as long as the citizens of Vancouver elect vision councillors, they won't increase the number of slot machines and gaming tables. But as soon as another council comes in, that's wide open.
I don't know if you've heard this late breaking news, folks, but they're also planning to put slot machines on the gondolas going up Grouse Mountain and actually on Grouse Grind. When you get to the middle of Grouse Grind, you can pause, and you're weighted down by coins. What do you need them for, right?
It's best to just...
just put them in there. Yeah. Is there any stop to, if the government had its way, would we have, bandits on every corner? Would Starbucks do a franchise number with?
Well, I think this is the really difficult question that the public and the government needs to be asking itself, because we have the Kendall report from the Provincial Medical Health Officer, Dr. Perry Kendall, who came out with some very, very sobering data about what has happened since we liberalized casino gambling in British Columbia. Our severe gambling addiction rate has more than doubled, putting the lie to the claim that, well, people will gamble anyway, so we may as well get the money.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, the mental health implications are very serious, and nobody in government seems to be addressing that there's a conflict here, that governments have a duty and an obligation to care for the weak and the vulnerable and not to exploit them for its own gain.
What kind of logical thinking is this? People will kill each other anyway, so we might as well give everyone a gun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, people are going to gamble anyways, so we might as well make it as possible as possible.
It's short-term thinking, and it's also thinking. It's very blindsided thinking because we're not bearing in mind that every severe gambling addict actually costs the public 4 times in healthcare costs what the average citizen does.
Just explain that.
I
agree with you, but I think you should spell it out.
It's in Dr. Perry Kendall's report.
Yep.
That in terms of additional problems, additional addictions, additional entrances to the hospital system, to the healthcare system, they cost roughly 4 times the average citizen. So, you know, you do have to pay the piper eventually, but it's really kind of just a shell game, really, with the government. But it makes their budgets look good because they can clear roughly $1 billion extra a year in gambling revenue that they don't have to, you know, it saves them from having to raise taxes.
So these are the sin tax stories, like cigarettes and like alcohol, and I'm sure if you're running our government, it just appears to be free money. Is that?
I think so. I think so. It's the very easy thing. I mean, this is what all governments are looking for, that easy break, because everybody is allergic to tax increases and to any other measures. So they're looking, can they offload this on someone else?
We have a new kind of client in addictions. I think I've mentioned this on this show before. Bear with me because it doesn't directly reflect on gambling, but it reflects on sin taxes. The new client started smoking pot when he or she was 9, smokes every day, is now 32, and is addicted to 12 other things. And it's easy to get them off the coke and the oxy and the booze and so on. But then they think smoking pot every day is okay, it's kosher, like that's normal, that's considered normal. And they have one other problem. They have no life experience. They've never had a job. They have no work ethic, you know. So
they can probably play video games.
But they can play video. So we're going to put more booze in grocery stores. That seems like a civilized thing to do. The only catch is, are we a civilized society? I think this is a juvenile society compared to a lot of European countries, which are a little more sophisticated.
European countries, and also, interestingly enough, Asian countries, certainly in the area of corporate responsibility and government responsibility around gambling addiction. The example of Norway comes to mind, but also Singapore, which has,
what do they do, Sandy?
It's really interesting. Singapore, first of all, for Singapore, gambling is intended to be for the tourist market. It's not intended to be for locals. Locals have to pay a cover charge of around $85 just to go in.
Oh, really?
Just to enter into the major casinos. And then they also have, it's not just voluntary self-exclusion, they have other forms of exclusion. Family members who have been damaged by loss of income.
They can say, don't let Bert in here.
They can make an application, as can creditors. If the person's an undischarged bankrupt, creditors can apply to have them excluded from casinos.
Really?
So it's a much more sort of holistic approach. Norway has a really interesting approach. They got rid of all of their slot machines. They have slot machines, but they're all, you have to have a government card, and they are all connected on a single server, and you cannot lose more than $75 a day in Norway on the slot machine. It doesn't matter what machine you go to, your card will come up and say, sorry, you can't play.
And you could only find them in either igloos or yurts. Yeah. Quick break, thank you. Our guest is Sandy Garossino. And we're talking about the BC Ferries thinking about putting one-armed bandits on their boats. Quick break, your chance to say hello. DavidBerner.com is the site to go to, and the chance for the lovely folks who support this program to say hello to you here on Shaw Community Television Cable 4. We'll be back with you just after we have a bet going about how long the commercial will take. This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Trial Lawyers Association of BC. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. My new book about addictions, All the Way Home, Building Recovery That Works. We understand that the latest possibility is that you can take your children to the petting zoo, and while they're getting involved with a goat, you can gamble away all the money so you won't be able to pay for the tow truck that comes and takes your car away. Our guest is Sandy Garossino, who is a lawyer and has been a prosecutor and heads up a number of charitable organizations, has a particular interest in the culture and the politics of India, and is involved with her daughter's musical career, which is great. So you're one of these Renaissance people. You do 90 things.
Yeah. None of them as well as they could be done.
No, I'm sure. And Sandy was the main push behind Vancouver Not Vegas, which defeated that motion to get a couple acres of gambling next to BC Place. So let's talk BC Ferries. What have they said exactly? Is this just some trial balloon they're floating up there, or have they actually said anything?
Well, they have said they want to explore the possibility of having slot machines on the ferries, and as much as people do discount it as a trial balloon, I don't. And the reason that I don't is, having watched the BC Lottery Corporation at close quarters for some time now, their approach is to expand gambling just about every opportunity they have, and there's no possible way that BC Ferries Corporation would have floated a trial balloon like this without having had significant consultation with the BC Lottery Corporation and with the Gaming Policy and Enforcement Branch of the government.
Yeah. Do you remember when Steve Wynn flew up here from Vegas? Mm-hmm. And what was he going to do? He was going to do, I think he was going to do the waterfront, wasn't he? He was going to turn the waterfront into Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Vancouver.
Las Vancouver.
Yeah.
But it's, Steve Wynn is much more preoccupied with his dealings in Macau at the moment.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting. I was going to mention Macau because you talked about Singapore and Norway as places that have a kind of more sophisticated approach. Now, Macau, I have friends who own apartments in Macau, and they love the place, and they're not gamblers. So what is it that Macau does differently?
Macau launders money out of China at the rate of $600 billion a year through its casinos.
Get out.
That is the real casino.
That's what it's really going on.
Absolutely. Through triads, through organized crime.
Yes.
That is, to a spectacularly phenomenal extent, to the extent that Macau has roughly 6 times the revenues of Las Vegas. And
I didn't know that.
Absolutely, and in fact, MGM Grand has been kicked out of Atlantic City. It's been told it has to sell its operations because of its relationships with the triads and organized crime in Macau.
So, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because Sandy, if that's the model, if Macau is the model, then what we must assume, I think correctly, is that would go on here, and probably does go on here. In other words, there must be money laundering going on per force as we speak in Vancouver casinos. I'm sure the people who run the casinos would want to thump me for saying that, but I'm just guessing that that's the case.
It's absolutely going on. It's going on in, I have not recently verified it, but there are 2 examples of, we have had informants out of the Edgewater Casino.
You have been a city prosecutor.
I have been a Crown prosecutor, and I have been approached by informants. CBC did a story on this, 24-hour-a-day operation inside the Edgewater Casino. There was recently a murder in, I think, about 2008 of a young woman who was actually an employee of money launderers in River Rock Casino, and the testimony at that murder trial was that her employer, the money launderer, the employer ran a 24-hour, 365-day-a-year operation inside the River Rock. Now you tell me they don't know about that.
It's a pretty easy way, an obvious kind of easy way to have money flowing, isn't it? you know, because this is a cash business, and so who's going to argue where the bills have come from?
Well, this is the, you know, we can talk about the ferries, or we can talk about the casinos. All of these things are wedded, but they have different styles of operation. But organized crime is deeply embedded in the casino industry for a very good reason.
And has been.
Because of the cash operations. The money laundering capacity is spectacular. And I mean, we had a letter during the Vancouver Not Vegas campaign. We had a letter signed by 18 senior policing experts, former members of the Organized Crime Agency of BC, the former deputy director of the Organized Crime Agency of BC, cautioning that organized crime is so endemic in the casino industry.
Yes.
That they absolutely opposed expansion, and in fact, we had a special operations unit, RCMP, and a special forces unit that they were meant to control and monitor and supervise the casino operations. And when they cautioned the provincial government that there was extreme vulnerability to infiltration of the industry by organized crime, the government shut them down.
If BC Ferries went ahead and did something as relatively simple, say, as putting a row of one-armed bandits, slot machines, on some boats from here to Victoria and back, do you think that crime would somehow get involved in that, or that could?
I'm less concerned about crime in that kind of environment, but it always has to be a concern. I'm more concerned about the responsibility. First of all, we need to have a real public policy debate about what are the limits. You know, it's know your limit, play within it.
Yes.
What is the limit? Where will governments say that's enough, we've gone this far, no further? TransLink's in trouble. Are we going to have slot machines at SkyTrain stations?
Yes.
You know, the healthcare system's in trouble.
Well, at SkyTrain stations, excuse me for interrupting, that's already a gamble just using them, just getting on, because you have to wade through all the drug addicts and prostitutes, you know, so congratulations. It's already a crapshoot, sorry.
But you know, slot machines are not a panacea for mismanagement. You know, they're not,
I write that down. That's great. That's a great line.
If you are running perpetual deficits, you have to solve that through proper management, through proper corporate governance, not just bring in slot machines as the answer.
Yeah. Are BC Ferries talking about more than slot machines? Is there something else they would think about?
I think they're just talking. Slot machines are easy. They're simple. You don't have to pay labor. I mean, you
set them up and there they are.
You set them up. They operate, and they're just a license to print money. It's easy as pie. So I think that's. But to me, one of the other concerns is this is our transportation system, and for the vast majority of people, it's the only transportation system to the island, and. To me, that's very irresponsible when you know that that our population has gambling addicts in it, that we are captive, you know, they're captive there. And we're forcing them into close proximity with the equivalent of a drug pusher for them. And that's a very irresponsible way to treat our vulnerable populations.
I go to Bowen Island on a 20-minute BC ferry once a week. I wonder what they could put on there that I could, maybe just 2 hands of blackjack?
Maybe some porn videos.
Porn videos!
We haven't got...
Perfect! Absolutely. I said to you on the phone when we were talking about this that, you know, I remember when they first started putting big screen TVs on BC Ferries, and my reaction was, we've had big screen TVs for 50 years. They're called windows, and they're looking at the best view on Earth. We're looking at water, cabins, trees, seagulls, whales, you know. What do I need? I need to watch the CBC News? I don't think so.
Beautiful British Columbian, isn't it ironic? I mean, one of the people interviewing me when this came up suggested that, well, the slots would be just a form of, you know, it's for the tourists. It's like tourists want to look at our beautiful, spectacular. Is there a better ocean or marine voyage
it's
in the world than this?
So, are you planning, besides showing up on little shows like this, are you planning any political action on this front, or are you going to wait for BC Ferries to make a move?
Well, I think that we'd probably wait. We're more concerned with what's coming up with Vancouver City and the casino, the zombie casino, which is coming back.
It's going to come back.
It's coming back.
You're pretty confident about that.
They're applying. They're up for their development permit on December 16th.
And then?
And then that's it. They're done. They're through.
No, but what are you going to do?
Well, we have some plans in the works.
Okay, and you've got lots of folks. You had a lot of is that the word? A lot of people signed on. Yeah, and a broad range of people.
A broad range of people.
Yeah. Who surprised you? What kinds of people surprised you that jumped on?
Well, what was really interesting was by the time we had built up the momentum, everybody wanted to come on. The big gap was that we didn't have people from the Board of Trade, which had traditionally objected to the casino. They objected to the wind proposal.
Yes.
And especially a number of women inside the Board of Trade were certainly unhappy with that decision. And we would hope that the Board of Trade would look much more carefully.
We'll watch very closely for future development, and we'll place a side bet on what happens. Thanks, Sandy. Thanks so much. All right, folks, that's it for today. Next week, a repeat show. I'm going on my annual cardiac stress test. So we're going to repeat our show from, I don't know, about 90 days ago. Dr. Steve Morgan from UBC came on and talked about pharmacare. How universal can we make pharmacare coverage? He's not talking to Obama about this. Thanks for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you here again on Shaw Community Television Cable 4. Good night.